Hi, welcome back. I've got a TRT update for you. So I've now been running the TRT medication for about 2 weeks, and I should mention I actually said the dosages wrong in the last video. I said 1.6 mil twice a week. That would be a lot of testosterone, so I just want to rectify that. It was 0.16 mil. It actually equates to around about 100 milligrams of test a week, so that is, you know, right on line with what people would refer to as a TRT dose. Some people are going to need a bit more, some people go up to 150, 175, and some people need a lot less depending on how sensitive they are. So this is why it's important to do this properly with professionals. Get your blood levels checked, because there's literally no way of knowing that otherwise. You know, I've heard people down the gym, they say, I'm on TRT, I just bought some stuff on the black market and I do 125 milligram a week. They have zero idea if that's a super physiological dose for them, if that's going to lead to side effects, if that's going to lead to long-lasting health problems like high blood pressure and stuff like that, or if it's not even enough and they're actually not getting the benefits of the medication that they could be. I think it's important to get this stuff from a reliable source, you know, a legal and professional source that's regulated. Not only that, but you have no idea what you're getting. I've seen a few comments in the last video and people have said, well, I can get X amount of testosterone on the internet for X price, and I'm sure you can, but there's no guarantee that that stuff's safe, even if it's made by a lab that you happen to have some sort of faith or trust in, or someone's recommended to you. These are unregulated labs, hence they're selling their stuff on the internet. If it appears to be a regulated lab, like it's farm grade, it's highly unlikely it's either stolen, in which case you're buying stolen goods or someone pretty dodgy, but the most likely is it's faked. There's no shortage of fake farmer gear out there, so if you're buying farm grade gear, it's probably fake on the internet. And if you're buying something from an underground lab, even if it's a lab that's supposed to be legit, you have no idea if those guys run out of some sort of ingredient one day and they choose to swap it for another, or if one of them didn't wash their hands on that particular day because he was just lazy. They're not regulating for any of that. The stuff isn't going through strict quality control. It's made in grey market labs in China and India, which frankly have a pretty poor reputation. So that's not something I'm willing to put my trust in as far as my health goes. You know, I might go to a grey marketplace in China if I wanted to buy some electronic goods at a discounted price, because the worst case scenario there is my torch isn't going to work maybe. I'm probably not going to choose to inject stuff from a grey market lab in China or India into my body. So have I been feeling any of the results? Yes, basically. I wasn't quite sure how long this was going to take. As I say, I've been taking these 2 shots a week. I basically split it up and do one on a Friday evening and one on a Tuesday morning, and that's pretty much, you know, halfway through the week, so it splits it fairly evenly. If I started to have any side effects or anything, I might have thought about splitting the dose even further, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Some people like to split it really small and do a tiny micro dose every day. That gets a little bit difficult. The reason being is if you're taking a TRT dose, the actual amount in the syringe is very small. The syringes themselves are like insulin syringes, so they're like a 1 ml syringe broken up with hash marks, but they're not tiny hash marks. I mean, if I give you an idea on one that I've just recently used, hopefully that will focus. 1 ml broken up into 10 hash marks. If you're going to break 0.32 of a mil down into like daily doses, it gets really difficult on a syringe like that to actually get an accurate reading off it. And you're also going to lose a tiny bit every time you do an injection, even if you use these dead space syringes. So you can see on the front of there, you've got the rubber, which is going to, where that rubber sits is going to give you your dosage amount, but then you've also got a kind of void around where the rubber sits. This is a dead space syringe that has a little rubber bung that goes right up into the syringe to push everything out, but you can still see a little void on the edges there with a very small amount of the medication in it. if you've got that small amount of medication in there to start with, and then you're losing some on the sides, you know, it starts to get really tricky to dose. So personally, I've avoided kind of going the every single day route just because of that difficulty of actually dosing it properly. So the benefits I've found so far, I was feeling very, very fatigued. You know, that was my main reason I started going to the doctor to ask about that. I then went and spoke to the guys at Optimail about this, and that's why I got tested, and I'm feeling a lot better. I've got a lot more energy, I'm feeling a lot brighter in the mornings, and most importantly, I'm actually sleeping better. You know, I was waking up multiple times per night previously for probably the last 6 to 8 months, maybe even up to a year, and I was just waking up feeling absolutely exhausted. I was slightly concerned I might have sleep apnea or something like that, and I do snore a bit and some nights are worse than others, but nothing like sleep apnea. You know, my partner would tell me if I was kind of doing anything crazy in the night, and she often has bouts of insomnia herself, so she's well aware of what I'm doing in the night time, and I don't seem to be doing anything like that. I would just wake up in the middle of the night and just not feel tired. I would be like instantly awake, and it would take me about an hour or so to settle back down, and that could happen 2 or 3 times a night. So you're losing maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night that way, and then I'd be waking up absolutely exhausted the next day. I obviously monitor my sleep through my Garmin wristwatch. That's been getting a lot better. You know, I was regularly getting poor. It would kind of grade your sleep and give you a number, and I was getting like, you know, 60s and 70s, and it would say my sleep was poor, the quality of it. Now I'm in the sort of 80 to 90 region, and it's grading my sleep as very good. So that's clearly got a lot better. My weight's gone up. I was down to about 87. I normally sit around 90. You know, before all this was going on, I was sat at around 90 for quite a long time. That was after I lost quite a lot of body weight. I was a lot higher than that before, but it was all fat. When I stripped the fat back and I was training, I was sat at about 90, and in the last year it slowly kind of dropped down to around 87, which was another big concern. You know, I had all these blood tests with the NHS because I was like, I'm dropping weight, I'm feeling tired, you know, you never know what that could be. So it was important to get stuff checked out. But glad to say, immediately my weight has started going up in the last few days, and it's actually gone up quite a bit. I've gone from 87 to 89.2, so a considerable weight gain. Now, some of that's going to be water, that's a given. You know, I've been training as well, so yeah, I might have put a little bit of muscle on, but there's no way that you're going to put that much muscle on in such a short time. I've definitely gotten stronger, but again, that can be as a reference to the water weight. You know, that helps you because obviously it engorges your muscles. The cells are holding a lot more water, similar to what creatine might do. And more importantly, I think it has to do with the psychological part of that I'm feeling a lot more motivated. I'm wanting to go to the gym. I'm listening to music again in the gym on my headphones. You know, I'd even given up putting music on because I just kind of lost the love for listening to music. I would just be like raw dogging it in the gym, going through the motions, didn't bother it with any music. Sometimes I'd have an audio book on, but you know, you're not really going to get hyped listening to an audio book. Now I'm putting music on again, putting some metal on to get me in a sort of lifting mood, and I'm feeling really, really good when I'm lifting. So I'm obviously putting in a lot more effort. It's the psychology of it that puts a lot of kilos on your lifts. If you go down there and feel a bit meh, then you know you're going to bench like 100 kilos, and then you could go down there and feel like, yeah, I'm going to absolutely smash this. And because you feel like that, you're just much more inclined to lift, you know, and I can push 120, 130 pretty easily. So my weights have gone up. I don't think that's a massive result of increased muscle because I haven't noticed any particular increased muscle, but it's definitely a result of a psychological change. In terms of psychological changes, I'm starting to see women that are looking a lot more attractive around, you know, and previous to that, I wouldn't even give girls a second thought. You know, I've obviously got a partner and we've got a good relationship with each other. But other than that, I was just like, oh, I'm pretty old, you know, I'm not really bothered about that kind of thing. And now I'm like, oh, she looks pretty. She looks pretty. So just as a beware, guys. You know, if you're someone that lacks a little bit of self-control, that could be a dangerous situation if you're in a relationship, because there's nothing wrong with looking and finding people pretty, but if you lack self-control and you actually start acting on that, then that could get you in problems with your partner. On the plus side of it, your partner might actually be very happy because you're obviously going to be showing them more interest, or maybe unhappy depending on how they feel about you. But there's definitely been a noticeable change there. So it ties in with all the things that you would associate, that you would expect from having a low testosterone level and then increasing. You know, all the classic symptoms that are commonly discussed I kind of had, and all of those symptoms seem to be being alleviated to a degree. It's still early days. I'm only running 2 times 0.16 mil. Which is a fairly low dose. Pretty soon I'm going to have another blood test with Optimail. I'll then find out, you know, exactly what my blood levels are, and they can make an assessment as to whether to increase, to decrease, whatever they want to do. And they're going to aim to get me on the, you know, the high side of the normal range, obviously safely, make sure that it isn't negatively impacting on any of my other health stats, because that's the other important part. It's not just getting your blood levels right, it's making sure that your HDL and LDL aren't going through the roof, or you aren't having any bizarre high blood pressure moments. You know, all these other things, these metrics that could be affected by hormone function, it's important to monitor them as well. I've met loads and loads of guys that have been doing their own TRT for years, and they have zero idea about any of that. You know, they literally never get their bloods tested at all. They never do their blood pressure or anything. In fact, one guy, I got him to do blood pressure at a gym once, and it was like it was so high it fell into the category of rush this person to hospital. And when I told him that, you know, I said, you should really get to hospital, that is seriously high. And he was like, man, I'm not too bothered. Those are the guys that we read about in the news, you know, that end up just falling over one day and never getting back up because they're walking around with massively high blood pressure, and that's just a ticking time bomb. So don't be that guy. You know, make sure you get this stuff looked at. People have said, well, maybe it's quite expensive. Look, it isn't too expensive when you consider, okay, it might cost like 20 or 30 quid more than doing like some dodgy grey market crap, but that's 20 or 30 quid more, ensuring that you're getting all the right treatment, the right stuff, looked at by professionals, regular blood levels done, so that everything can be checked off and professionally monitored. That's well worth it, in my opinion. You know, if I said to you, is it worth paying like an extra 20 quid a month to make sure you're not going to suddenly drop dead, most people would say, yeah, that's worth it. So that's why I've gone that route. That's why I'm going with a private clinic. The NHS is hugely difficult to get into this stuff with. It would have taken me probably months, if not maybe years, to actually get from seeing GPs to getting an appointment at a hospital with a specialist endocrinologist, and then going through all the BS with him, because the NHS is a huge bureaucratic nightmare. You know, at some point at the end of 2025 I might have eventually got my medication, at which point I would have been miserable for like 10 months. I can afford to go private, so I went private, and I thoroughly recommend it. If you can afford it, I would recommend going private. It's by far the quickest, easiest, and probably the most efficient option. If you can't afford it, you're going to have to go the NHS route and put up with the wait times and the problems that result from that. But either way, you know, I would advocate not doing the grey market dodgy guy at the back of the gym. The other issue I have with that is never an option for me, because I have a very responsible job. You know, it's one thing to get on some medication that's prescribed by a doctor, that's okay. But if you start taking some sort of grey market stuff you've got no prescription for, and then you get drug tested at work, what are you going to do then? You know, that's not going to go well. And what happens when you're traveling and you need to take medication with you? If you have a prescription, you can do that pretty safely. You can even travel through airports with this stuff, the same as someone who is dependent on insulin would. If you don't have a prescription, you can't be traveling with anything. So that kind of makes it really hard to disappear off on holiday for 2 or 3 weeks you're going to have to just have that as an off time, and that's going to massively fluctuate your hormone levels. So there's all kinds of reasons why you should kind of go the legit route rather than the grey market route. Might work for you if you've got no responsibilities, you've got a job that you don't particularly care about, you don't particularly care about getting a criminal record, if you're sneaking around buying black market substances and whatever, then fine, that might be a great thing for you. And you don't care about your health, you know, all those things that as an older guy I definitely do care about. So that wasn't interesting to me at all at this age, let's put it that way. Thank you very much for listening. I will do another update in a couple of weeks. I will then add on that update, you know, some stats. I'll show you the sleep stats, I'll show you the weight stats, because I'm getting on the scales and that records it on the Garmin scales as well, so we can have a look at all that, get some kind of hard data, and maybe by then I'll have also had a blood test as well, and we can talk about that too. Thanks for watching, take care, I'll catch you all next time.